At the end of my 3-day business trip in New York, my son grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, can I stop taking the pills Auntie gives me?" My parents and sister laughed it off, calling them harmless vitamins. I took the bottle to a doctor, and her face went pale the moment she saw the results. I was Sienna Wade, 41, perpetually exhausted, and accustomed to managing crises that involved budgets measured in millions of dollars, not domestic dramas. The irony wasn't lost on me. I just stepped off a direct flight from JFK, hauling my carry-on and laptop bag. It was exactly 6 o'clock in the evening, Friday, when I used my key to unlock the front door of our Cedar Hills home in Beaverton, Oregon. This was the moment I'd been scheduled to return. The scent of pine and the faint, overly sweet aroma of a candle my sister, Brooke, always insisted on burning hit me first. The second the door clicked shut, my 9-year-old son, Lucas, appeared from the living room. His normally rosy cheeks were pale, and his eyes, usually bright with mischief, were heavy. He didn't run to me with the usual excited force. Instead, he shuffled, grabbed my sleeve with a surprising, desperate grip, and pulled me low. "Mom," he whispered, his breath hot and fast against my ear. "Can I please stop taking the pills? Aunt Brooke makes me swallow. They make me throw up. And I sleep all day." The unexpected plea hit me like a physical punch, immediately firing the guilt I always carried about my travel schedule. Before I could even form a comforting answer or a probing question, Brooke stepped out of the kitchen entryway. She looked too relaxed. Leaning against the door frame, her arms crossed over a sweatshirt. A fake, tight smile was plastered across her face. "He's just being dramatic, Sienna," Brooke said, her voice dripping with an irritatingly patronizing tone. "It's special vitamins, custom-made, good stuff. You know how sensitive he is." Then my mother, Marilyn Wade, came around the corner. She moved toward Lucas, running her hand over his thinning hair in a practiced, maternal gesture that felt completely performative. "Listen to your aunt, sweetheart. She only wants what's best for you." My father, Edward Wade, didn't move from his armchair by the muted television where a golf rerun played. He merely nodded, his eyes fixed on me. "Lucky he has family here. You're gone half the month, Sienna. Someone needs to keep things running." The familiar, corrosive judgment stung, but I was used to it. The Wades were experts in the quiet art of making me feel inadequate for choosing a demanding career over full-time domesticity. What truly chilled me was what happened next. Brooke, Mom, and Dad exchanged a quick, tight glance. It was an involuntary flicker of unity, a silent agreement that sealed off the three of them from me. I had seen that look before, many times lately, usually whenever I questioned a household expense or Lucas's routine. But this time, it was colder, more urgent. Lucas squeezed my hand so hard it actually hurt. I looked down at his face, seeing the fear there, and the decision was made. I could manage the guilt later. I had to manage the truth now. That night, after the house finally went quiet, after the predictable evening of stilted conversation, and my parents' quiet sniping about my travel log, I waited until midnight. The only sounds were the slow rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, and the Oregon rain starting against the window panes. I slipped out of bed, moving with the silent, predatory efficiency I usually reserved for high stakes presentations. I went straight to Brooke's room, which was pristine and empty. I searched the top shelf of her closet, behind a stack of folded sweaters. My hand closed around a small, smooth bottle. It was plastic, pure white, and bore no official label. Only a small, hastily torn piece of masking tape with Brooke's familiar, looped handwriting. Vitamins. I twisted the cap. The smell that hit me was not the clean, metallic scent of iron or the dusty chalkiness of a multivitamin. It was thick, heavy, and undeniably chemical. It was the unmistakable stench of a powerful, industrial, strength sleep medicine. My blood turned to ice water. It wasn't vitamins. It was poison. That bottle never left my hand the whole night. I sat on the floor of Lucas's bedroom, my back against the door, holding him tightly, as he finally drifted into the unnaturally deep sleep he'd complained about. Every time he shifted, I checked his breathing, terrified I would miss a change in rhythm. I watched the clock tick past 3 o'clock. Then 4. By 5 o'clock and 30 minutes, I couldn't wait for morning. I couldn't risk him taking another dose. I gently woke Lucas, told him we were going for a quick, necessary checkup before breakfast, and carried his half-asleep body to the car. 25 minutes later, we pulled into the concrete parking garage at Providence, St. Vincent Medical Center. The crisis manager in me was already operating at full capacity. The daughter in me, the one who had trusted her family, was dead. The unsettling image of my family exchanging that quick, tight glance lingered, sharp and cold, forcing me to ignore the crushing exhaustion of the 3-day trip and act. I had tucked Lucas into the back seat, half asleep but safe from the silent house, and now we were navigating the early morning traffic toward the hospital. The bottle, still in the pocket of my coat, felt heavy, cold, and immensely powerful, like a vial of pure, condensed malice. The drive was silent save for the drumming of the wipers against a light drizzle. I kept replaying the memory of the stench. That thick, heavy chemical odor. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. And the realization that the people I had left in charge of my son, the people I had trusted with the key to my home and my life, were actively harming him for reasons I couldn't yet comprehend, twisted the knife of my old guilt. I had always been afraid that my career made me a bad mother. My parents and sister had certainly reminded me of that fear often enough. Now, I felt a desperate, primal urge to protect him, to make up for every hour I had spent away. 25 minutes after leaving the house, we pulled into the parking garage at Providence, St. Vincent Medical Center. I carried Lucas, who was lethargic and strangely compliant, up to the pediatric emergency floor. Dr. Sarah McGeown was the on-call pediatrician. She was a woman in her mid-40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and an economy of movement that spoke of deep efficiency. She took one look at Lucas, his pale eyelids, his heavy speech, his slow, deliberate movements, and she didn't waste time on history or questions about my job. "I need to know what he ingested," she asked, her voice low and firm. And when I reached into my coat pocket, my hand was shaking only slightly as I placed the smooth, white, unlabeled bottle on the stainless steel examination tray. The masking tape with Brooke's familiar handwriting, vitamins, looked sickeningly benign under the harsh fluorescent lights. "I found this last night," I said, my voice coming out flat and emotionless, a coping mechanism taking over. My sister, his aunt, told him they were special vitamins to help him sleep. He complained about vomiting and sleeping too much. Dr. McGuinn picked up the bottle with a piece of gauze, her brow furrowing slightly at the absence of any safety warnings or labels. She twisted the cap, took a quick, professional whiff, and her expression tightened. She didn't need a lab to know that wasn't a multivitamin. "We are ordering stat blood work and a full tox screen," she announced, already turning toward the door. "We'll need to admit him to the pediatric observation bay immediately for cardiac monitoring. The symptoms you're describing, combined with the presentation, are concerning." She didn't sugarcoat it. In the span of 5 minutes, my son was whisked away on a gurney, disappearing behind double doors. I was left pacing the hallway, clutching my coat like an empty shell. The scent of disinfectant and worry hung in the air. I kept thinking about Brooke's fake smile and Dad's quick nod. Had they known? Had they all been in on this? The suspicion was evolving rapidly into a crushing certainty. 3 agonizing hours crawled by. I watched the clock move, minute by heavy minute, feeling the absence of my son more acutely than I had felt the absence of my family during any of my business trips. Finally, Dr. McGuinn called me into her small, windowless office. She closed the door, shutting out the muted hospital noises, and slid a lab printout across the desk. The paper was clean, official, and devastating. I only saw one thing first: the number. Diphenhydramine level. She read, pointing to a value written out as 240. 5.0 nmol. That's 7 times the upper limit for an adult, Sienna. I sat down hard in the chair behind me. My legs had simply ceased to function. 7 times. In my 9-year-old son, Dr. McGuinn didn't offer comfort. She offered facts, and they were black and damning. In a child of Lucas's size, repeated doses at this strength can cause permanent cognitive injury. She continued, her voice gaining a hard, sharp edge, specifically impacting memory, attention, and processing speed. She paused, looking me directly in the eye, her medical objectivity momentarily replaced by stern certainty. "Someone has been intentionally sedating your son with adult, strength sleep medication for an extended period." The words, "intentionally sedating," didn't even seem strong enough for what had happened. This wasn't neglect. This was an attack. Dr. McGuinn picked up the phone. She dialed Child Protective Services herself, then campus security. She didn't ask me if I wanted to involve the authorities. She simply did it. Within minutes, a social worker and a Washington County deputy were in the room. I handed over the unlabeled bottle. Dr. McGuinn gave them the lab report and a sealed evidence bag. The deputy photographed everything. The social worker told me Lucas would stay admitted for monitoring and a full toxicology panel. They needed to establish the exact timeline of exposure. Before they took the originals of the evidence, Dr. McGuinn slipped me a folded duplicate summary. "For your records, Sienna," she whispered, her eyes serious. "Take this home carefully. You're going to need it." It was the first sign of alliance I'd been given since landing in Portland. I tucked the paper into my coat, the cold certainty of the crime replacing the fear in my stomach. The confrontation was coming. The drive back to Beaverton felt endless, but I was no longer afraid. I was focused. The strategic, analytical part of my brain had finally taken over. I knew what I was fighting now. And I knew who. The drive back was fueled by the doctor's warning and the urgent need to protect the evidence. I could still feel the phantom weight of the bottle in my coat pocket, but now it was overshadowed by the crinkle of the folded lab summary, the undeniable proof. Dr. McGuigan's clinical assessment that someone had been intentionally sedating my son had vaporized every ounce of my self-doubt and guilt. I was no longer an absent parent defending herself. I was a witness and a prosecutor. I arrived home just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The afternoon light was slanted and weak, casting long shadows inside the house, but the atmosphere felt unnaturally bright and ordinary. Brooke was sprawled on the living room couch, scrolling on her phone, wearing an oversized pair of pajama shorts. My mother was folding laundry at the dining table, and my father was exactly where I had left him, watching a golf rerun, the volume muted. The normalcy was sickening. They were living in a domestic haze, utterly unaware that I had just signed off on a Child Protective Services investigation and a police report. I dropped my car keys on the granite counter with a sharper, louder sound than was necessary. All 3 of them glanced up. I walked straight to the coffee table, smoothed the folded paper in my hand, and placed the lab summary face up in the center. Brooke sat up slowly, the phone dropping onto the cushion beside her. Mom froze mid-fold, her eyes narrowed slightly. Dad was the only one who reacted with physical speed, muting the television with the remote, the sudden silence heavy and unnatural. Brooke reached for the paper first. She scanned the page, her eyes darting from the hospital letterhead to the highlighted medical terms. Diphenhydramine, 7 times the upper limit, risk of permanent cognitive injury. The color drained from her face, leaving a pale, sickly yellow tinge. Dad snatched it next. He frowned, holding the paper away from his body, as if it were written in a foreign language he couldn't decipher. Lab error, he muttered, his voice gravelly and dismissive. Happens all the time. Hospitals are sloppy. Mom moved around the table, putting her hands on Brooke's shoulders in a tight, protective grip. Honey, you were only trying to help the boy rest better, she insisted, her voice soft but firm. Doctors blow everything out of proportion. They always do. Brooke's voice, usually so casual and cutting, cracked with strain. It's just a stronger vitamin. Sienna is overreacting. She always does, especially when she's tired. I kept my voice flat, deadly calm. I wanted them to hear the facts, not the emotion. I wanted to see the moment the reality hit them. Child Protective Services is already involved, I stated, watching them closely. The police have the bottle. They're running a toxicology report on the contents. This isn't a misunderstanding. And it isn't going away. The dead silence that followed was immense, thick enough to drown in. Dad leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his face hardening into the look he used when negotiating business deals. You're willing to destroy your own family over a piece of paper, he challenged, focusing on the loyalty I was supposed to owe them. Mom's grip tightened on Brooke's shoulders. Think about Lucas, Sienna. All this stress isn't good for him. You dragging him to the hospital, calling the police. That will hurt him more than any vitamin. I saw the calculation in Brooke's eyes, Behind the manufactured tears, she was wiping away. She was thinking, assessing the damage, not repenting. Dad glanced at Mom, giving the tiniest, almost imperceptible shake of his head. A silent instruction. Say nothing more. Let her hang herself with her temper. I turned and walked toward the stairs. My emotional arc was not yet complete. I was not ready to explode. I was ready to prepare. I needed more than a lab report. I needed irrefutable context. Behind me, the silence was broken by my father's low whisper. Intended to reassure Brooke, but audible in the heavy silence. Let it blow over. She'll calm down. Give her a day or two. I closed my bedroom door. I didn't just close it, I locked it. I pulled out my work laptop and began backing up every photo, every travel log, every piece of financial paperwork I had onto a secured cloud drive. The cold calculation Dr. McGowan had ignited was now blazing. I had to assume they would try to fabricate a story, to erase evidence, or to discredit me. I was preparing for a legal war against the people who raised me. And I knew one truth. I couldn't rely on my own presence, or my word against the word of 3 people living permanently in my house. My evidence had to be objective, digital, and overwhelming. The feeling of being completely and utterly alone in my own home, fighting a 3-on-1 war for my son's life, solidified my resolve. I would not calm down. I was just getting started. Say nothing more. Let her hang herself with her temper. The cold calculation sparked by Dr. McGowan had taken full control. I realized that if they could betray me this fundamentally, my word against their 3 could never stand up in court. I needed proof that spoke when I was not there. Sunday morning, the opportunity came. I heard the familiar sounds of the weekend Costco run, Dad's keys rattling, Mom's cheerful, oblivious chatter about bulk discounts, and the groan of the garage door opening. I waited until the sound of the SUV's engine faded around the corner onto 142nd Street, then I moved. My movements were swift and silent, powered by focused adrenaline. I hadn't wasted time. I had paid extra for same-day pickup at the Best Buy in Tannisbourne. Inside the bag were 4 Arlo Essential indoor cameras. They were matte white, no bigger than hockey pucks, designed to blend seamlessly into a ceiling corner. They were perfectly silent, had no blinking lights, and ran on battery power advertised for 6 months. I was a corporate professional. This was just a different kind of project management. I grabbed the ladder from the garage and worked in silence. The first unit was the most critical. I screwed it into the basement ceiling, directly above the old leather couch my father used for watching football. It had a wide-angle lens, perfectly covering the entire recreation area, including the bar and the string lights Brooke had recently hung there. It was the space they thought was their private sanctuary. The second camera was tucked high into a corner, joist near the mini fridge in the basement, designed to catch the stairs and the main doorway. This provided redundancy and an angle on anyone entering or leaving the secret space. The third went high in the living room crown molding, aimed at the front entrance and the main hallway beyond. This one was to document who came in and who left. I needed to see if Brooke had outside help. The fourth, and final, camera was positioned strategically in the upstairs hall. It was perfectly positioned to see every bedroom door and the top of the main staircase. It provided coverage for any late, night movements or quiet meetings that happened after Mom and Dad went to bed. Each installation took maybe 10 minutes. No wires, no fuss. I paired them instantly to a brand new cloud account I had established using a new email address. I changed the default password to a complex string of characters that only I would ever know, enabling motion alerts and 24-hour continuous cloud recording. I wanted every minute, every sound, and every movement logged off, sight, and safe. The feeling of gathering tangible data, of transforming my helpless rage into strategic defense, was intensely empowering. By the time I heard the distinct rumble of the garage door opening again, every camera was live and completely invisible. They drove back into a house that was no longer theirs alone. It was now a surveillance site. Monday morning, I dropped Lucas at Cedar Mill Elementary. I kissed the top of his head, told him I loved him, and drove downtown to the Pearl District as if nothing had changed. I sat at my standing desk, pretending to review marketing decks while, on the second monitor, I opened the discreet window of the Arlo feed. I was ready to watch my own destruction. At exactly 9:03 in the morning, my phone vibrated. Motion alert, front door. I clicked the live feed. Brooke, still in pajama shorts and one of my old college hoodies, opened the front door for a man I had never seen before. He was dark-haired, wearing a navy pea coat, and carrying 2 paper cups from Dragonfly Coffee on Canyon Road. I mentally filed his face. She took the coffee, kissed him hard, right there on the porch, then pulled him inside. They disappeared down the basement stairs. I switched feeds immediately to the basement couch camera. It caught everything in crisp, high definition. Brooke set the coffees down, pushed him gently against the backrest of the couch, and climbed onto his lap. They kissed, like they had been waiting weeks for this moment. He laughed, a low rumble. When she whispered something against his ear, she tugged his coat off, letting it drop to the floor, then reached for the remote and flicked on the little string lights she had hung last month. The glow made the scene look staged, intimate, and practiced. She glanced up once, directly toward the ceiling, right toward the lens she had no idea was there, and smirked before burying her face in his neck again. The betrayal was two-fold now, financial and physical. My home was truly no longer mine. But the surveillance was working. I now had the pattern, the second conspirator, and the location. I was waiting for the motive. I was ready to wait as long as it took. The surveillance was working, but the pattern was sickeningly repetitive. Monday. The man I would later learn was Landon Hayes, arrived at 9:03. Tuesday. He arrived at 10:41. The next 3 days became a silent, voyeuristic montage of my betrayal. Running on a silent monitor beside my work screen, I sat at my standing desk, pretending to dive into quarterly marketing decks, while with my other eye, I watched the live feed of my basement. My home, my sanctuary, was being used like a hotel room by my sister and her lover. On Tuesday, the routine was slightly different. Landon arrived with the same Dragonfly Coffee, taking the same route straight to the basement, but this time, Brooke had music playing. Some indie playlist she knew I hated, the kind of music that tried too hard to be cool. They danced slow in the middle of the rug, barefoot, wine glasses already in hand. They were not subtle. They were comfortable. They felt entitled. On Wednesday, he showed up at noon with takeout. I recognized the container from the Thai place on Murray. The basement camera caught them eating cross-legged on the floor, feeding each other noodles between kisses, laughing at private jokes I couldn't hear yet. The lack of audio was frustrating, a constant, irritating barrier between me and the proof I needed. I had motion, time, and location, but I didn't have motive. Thursday was the most significant deviation from the pattern. He walked in at 9:9 in the morning, carrying a small, black duffel bag. Brooke locked the front door behind him, took the bag, and led him straight downstairs. The duffel bag stayed down there the entire day. The fact that he brought luggage, not food or coffee, implied something permanent. Something related to an extended stay, or maybe something related to the plot itself. My pulse never slowed the entire week. I drank coffee I didn't taste, and answered Slack messages with one hand, while the other hovered over the live feed, constantly refreshing. My professional skills, my capacity for meticulous data collection and cold-eyed pattern recognition, had fully integrated with my primal protective instinct. I was a machine now, focused entirely on the capture. The waiting was the hardest part. It was a psychological purgatory of sustained, seething intensity. By Thursday night, I had over 30 hours of time-stamped footage. 30 hours of proof that Brooke was not the dedicated caregiver my parents claimed her to be, but a deceitful resident exploiting my absence. But I still lacked the smoking gun, the audio, the clear, undeniable declaration of their criminal intent. I closed my office early. The rain had started, a heavy Oregon curtain of water. I drove home, but I didn't pull into the driveway. Instead, I parked 3 houses down under a huge, dripping maple tree, letting the dark canopy hide my car. I opened the laptop on the passenger seat, pulled up the basement feed, and waited for Friday. I knew their behavior was linked to my travel schedule, and I knew Friday was the day I was scheduled to return. My presence was their trigger. If they were going to talk about their plans, it would be before my car officially arrived in the driveway. I sat in the dark car, the rain hitting the roof like a frantic drumbeat, trying to drown out the horrible uncertainty. My rage was no longer a frantic fire. It was a controlled burn, waiting for the right moment to ignite. I had survived the betrayal. Now, I just needed the words. I didn't go inside after work on Friday. I parked 3 blocks away, hidden under the deep, dripping cedars on 141st Street. I cracked the window for air and pulled the laptop onto the steering wheel. I was physically present, yet completely invisible. A silent observer waiting for the final act of the performance. I was ready to listen. The rain hammered the roof of the sedan, trying to drown out the horrible knowledge I already carried. I had been waiting for days, and my patience was a wire pulled taut. The air was cold, but I was burning with anticipation and a focused, surgical rage. The pattern was about to break. At 8:17 in the morning, Landon walked in carrying the familiar 2 coffees from Dragonfly on Canyon Road and a small paper bag. Brooke met him at the door wearing nothing but an oversized flannel, my flannel, and pulled him straight downstairs. I switched the laptop feed to the basement wide angle. Brooke set the coffees on the wooden storage trunk, flicked on the little fairy lights, and pushed Landon onto the couch. "Your sister's definitely gone, until 6 o'clock at the earliest," she said, her voice clear even through the camera's microphone. "I was recording everything, both video and audio, to the encrypted cloud drive. We've got the whole day." She kissed him slow, then pulled back just enough for the camera to catch every word, every shift in expression. "Everything's on track, babe," Brooke said, smiling smugly. "Lucas failed another spelling test last week. Teacher already emailed about possible processing issues." They were waiting for him to fail. They were manufacturing the failure. "Another month of this dosage," Brooke continued, tracing the line of his jaw. "And no pediatrician will question a developmental delay diagnosis. Especially since his high-powered mommy is never around." Landon traced the chain around her neck, a heavy silver one I'd never seen before. And then Mom and Dad file for guardianship of a cognitively impaired minor. Brooke purred, her voice low and conspiratorial. "Oregon law is clear. If the parent is deemed unfit due to absenteeism, and the child has special needs, the court almost always awards guardianship to willing family members." My fingers dug into the steering wheel. Guardianship. It wasn't just about making Lucas compliant. It was about control. Once they control Lucas, they control his trust, Brooke explained, laying out the mechanism of the crime with sickening, corporate clarity. Half the equity in this house came from his father's life insurance payout. That money was earmarked for his future care. Guardians get to decide what care means. She smiled again, a cold, empty expression. "We liquidate the asset. Pay off Dad's $70,000 hole from that Idaho land flop, give Mom and Dad a cushion, and the rest is ours." Sienna keeps her job and her suitcase. The betrayal was complete. It wasn't just about petty jealousy. It was a planned, multi-layered criminal conspiracy involving my sister, my mother, and my father, all aimed at destroying my son's future for a financial payout. Landon raised an eyebrow, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "Your parents are really in on this." "Dad's desperate," Brooke said dismissively. "Mom's always chosen me anyway." They've been dropping hints for months about how unfair it is that I'm struggling while Sienna got the house in the divorce settlement. She reached for her phone. I recognized the icon on my banking app. It was still logged in on her device, because I had trusted her with a secondary debit card for groceries. She turned the screen toward Landon. $4,200 to Bridgeport Jewelers. She read from the transaction history. Tudor Black Bay. "Happy birthday, baby." He kissed her hard enough that the couch creaked. "You're insane." "I love it." Brooke laughed against his mouth. "Just wait until escrow closes." I sat in the dark car, the rain streaking the windshield, replaying the clip 3 times to be absolutely sure I hadn't imagined the words guardianship, cognitive injury, liquidate, $70,000 hole. Every syllable was crystal clear. I screen recorded the entire conversation, making multiple redundant copies. Then I pulled up the banking app and dug through the transaction history. The jewelry charge had posted Wednesday at 2 o'clock and 14 minutes in the afternoon. The notification had been sent to the old Gmail account I'd abandoned after the divorce. The one still linked to the card, because I'd never bothered to update it. Later that night, long after Lucas was asleep in his hospital bed, and Brooke and Landon had left, the hallway camera caught Mom and Dad in the kitchen. They thought everyone was in bed. Dad poured 2 fingers of bourbon. As soon as we have the neuropsych report, we file. Dad whispered, his voice low and conspiratorial. I already talked to the attorney in Tigard. Sienna travels too much, works too much. Classic neglect. The judge will side with family. Mom nodded, twisting her wedding ring. Brooke deserves this house more anyway. She's the one who's been here every day. Dad clinked his glass against hers. To new beginnings. I saved that clip too. I was no longer grieving the loss of my family. I was looking at 24 video files of criminal evidence. The deep devastation had converted into an incandescent, focused fury. My hands were ice cold, but steady. Ready for the confrontation that would end everything. The final thread of hope, the desperate, lingering illusion that my family might have simply made a terrible mistake, had snapped the second I heard Brooke's voice detailing the liquidation plan. The devastation was over. All that was left was an incandescent, focused fury that made my movements smooth and deliberate. Saturday morning, I walked into the kitchen just after 9 o'clock. They were all there, eating cereal at the island, maintaining a pathetic illusion of normalcy. I didn't speak. I simply set my phone on the island, screen up, volume maxed, and hit play on the basement clip. Brooke's voice, sickeningly cheerful, filled the room. Once they control Lucas, they control his trust. Sienna keeps her job and her suitcase. The spoons froze midair. My father's hand, reaching for the milk carton, stopped dead. Color drained from every face at the island. I let it run, forcing them to listen to the calculated, corporate description of their plan to ruin a 9-year-old child and steal his father's legacy. I let that clip finish. 2 hours later, I walked through the front door at 3 o'clock, and 7 minutes sharp, I had gone out. Knowing I had to give them time to scramble, to panic, to regroup, which would only further confirm their guilt. The smell of garlic and oregano hit me first. They were making dinner. Mom stood at the stove stirring marinara sauce. Dad was at the island cubing ciabatta for garlic bread. From the basement came the low thump of music and Brooke's unmistakable, obnoxious laugh. They had decided the panic was over. They had decided I would calm down. I dropped my heavy tote bag on the bench, kicked off my shoes, and pulled my phone from my pocket. 1 tap. Volume max. The Thursday clip started rolling through the built, in-house speakers that I had connected to the same network as the cameras over a year ago for music streaming. Brooke's voice, amplified and booming, tore through the house. Court-approved sale for care purposes. Dad pays off his Idaho debt. Mom gets her cruise fund, and we walk away with the rest. The wooden spoon clattered into the pot. Mom spun around. Sauce splattering onto the backsplash tiles. Dad's knife froze midair, suspended above the bread. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. Brooke burst into the kitchen first, her face flushed and furious. Landon was half a step behind her, shirt untucked, his eyes wide and panicked. Brooke saw the phone in my hand, saw the screen, and the last vestiges of color drained from her face. Dad recovered first, his face turning purple with rage. Turn that off now. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Sienna, You recorded your own family. I didn't move. The clip kept playing, transitioning seamlessly to Dad's midnight bourbon toast about guardianship. Every syllable of their betrayal echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Brooke lunged for the phone. I lifted it higher, meeting her desperate, animalistic glare. "Touch me, and it goes straight to the Washington County Sheriff," I said, my voice calm, flat, and deadly. Landon shifted toward the back door, eyes darting, looking for escape. Brooke grabbed his wrist, her grip tightening until her knuckles went white. "You're not leaving me here?" Dad's jaw worked, his temper overwhelming him. "You have no right to spy on us in our own house." "This is my house," I said. The quiet authority in my voice stopped him cold. "My name is on the deed. My son you've been poisoning. My life you plan to sell." Mom started sobbing, big, dramatic, useless tears. "We were only trying to secure everyone's future." Brooke's voice cracked with raw, wounded entitlement. "You're never here. I've been the one raising him, while you chase promotions in New York." Dad slammed the knife down on the marble. "You call the police, and you destroy 4 lives. Think about Lucas. You want him taken away by strangers." I met his stare, letting him see the cold clarity in my eyes. "I am thinking about Lucas. That's why this ends right now." Landon tried again, quieter, pleading. "Brooke, I really think." She whipped around on him. "We're in this together. You promised." He looked at me, then at the floor, and took one slow step back, prioritizing self-preservation. Brooke's grip on his wrist tightened until she was shaking. Mom moved between us, arms spread like a shield. "Sienna, baby, we're blood. Let's talk this out. Nobody has to get hurt." I laughed. It was a short, sharp, humorless sound. Blood doesn't drug a 9-year-old for profit. Dad took a threatening step forward, trying one last power play. "You report this, and we'll fight you in court for years. We'll say you fabricated everything. Who do you think the judge will believe? Grandparents who've been here every day? Or the mother who's gone half the month?" Brooke's eyes narrowed, spitting venom. "And when they dig into your travel schedule, your overtime, your nanny cancellations, good luck keeping custody." Mom nodded through her tears. "We only want what's best for the boy." I looked at the 3 people who had raised me, the people who had shared holidays and birthdays and funerals, and felt the last thread of attachment snap. "You want what's best for yourselves," I said. "And you just confessed to it on camera." Dad's fists clenched. "You'll regret this." Mom collapsed into a dining chair, wailing dramatically. "My own daughter!" Brooke screamed with pure rage. "This house should have been mine anyway." Landon finally wrenched free of Brooke's grasp and bolted for the back door. The screen door slammed behind him. He was the first casualty. I raised the phone, ended the recording, and dialed 911 right in front of them. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my eyes locked on my family, refusing to look away. I need officers and child protective services to 140 2A7 SW Aspen Lane in Beaverton. My son has been poisoned by relatives, attempting to steal his inheritance. I have video and audio evidence. Brooke lunged. Dad grabbed her arm and held her back. Mom just kept crying into her hands. The dispatcher's voice remained calm. units are en route. Ma'am. Stay on the line. I hung up only when I heard the unmistakable sound of sirens 2 blocks away, their lights strobing through the falling drizzle. The battle was over. The cleanup was about to begin. The first patrol car rolled up exactly 11 minutes later, lights cutting through the drizzle and bathing the front porch in stark, official blue. A second unit followed, then an unmarked Child Protective Services sedan. I met them at the door. The USB drive containing 27 video files already in my hand, my phone recording the interaction for backup. I walked the lead officer, Sergeant Ramirez, straight to the living room, where my father stood rigid by the couch, my mother clutched tissues, and Brooke paced like a caged animal, mascara streaking down her face. I handed over the drive. Child endangerment. Conspiracy to commit guardianship fraud. Attempted theft of a minor's trust. Everything you need is on here. Ramirez plugged the USB into his body cam tablet. The Thursday clip. Brooke's voice detailing the liquidation plan began to play in the silent room. Dad lunged for the remote to turn off the speakers, but the second officer blocked him without effort. The shift in power was absolute and instantaneous. The social worker, Miss Chen, knelt beside Lucas, who had wandered downstairs, clutching his stuffed orca. She spoke softly, asking simple questions. He answered in a small, fuzzy voice. Aunt Brooke makes me take the white pills when Mom's gone. They make my head fuzzy. Miss Chen's face hardened. She stood up. We are transporting the minor for immediate medical evaluation. Providence St. Vincent has a bed ready. Brooke screamed. You can't take him. Ramirez calmly read her rights, though cuffing wasn't needed yet. She wasn't running. Dad tried to argue jurisdiction. Mom collapsed into a dining chair, sobbing into her hands. I signed the temporary safety plan on the spot. Lucas hugged me tight. Are you coming with me? Every second, buddy. While the officers secured the scene, I pulled the printed deed from my home office drawer. Recorded Multnomah County, 2019, my name only, and showed it to Sergeant Ramirez. This property is solely mine. I'm exercising my legal right to revoke residency privileges for Marilyn Wade, Edward Wade, and Brooke Wade, effective immediately. My father's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in my life, he had nothing left to say. Ramirez nodded. We can stand by while they collect essentials. 24 hours to vacate fully. After that, it's trespassing. Ms. Chen took Lucas by the hand. I grabbed his small overnight bag and followed them out to the CPS car. Brooke tried to run after us, screaming my name, but an officer gently blocked her path. Her desperate, enraged scream echoed down the quiet suburban street as we pulled away. At the hospital, they drew new blood, ran a fresh tox screen, and admitted Lucas to pediatrics for observation. By 9 o'clock that night, the on-call judge signed the emergency protective order over video link. No contact between Lucas and the 3 named adults for 72 hours minimum. With review scheduled within 5 days, and an automatic renewal clause if risk persisted. I sat in the vinyl chair beside Lucas's bed, holding his hand while he slept under warm blankets, finally without chemical fog. The monitoring equipment beeped steady and strong. Back home, the officers oversaw the packing. Dad carried out 2 suitcases in silence. Mom followed with a laundry basket of clothes, eyes swollen. Brooke refused to pack at first, sitting on the basement couch, screaming that everything was hers by right. Eventually, the officers explained her choices: voluntary departure or involuntary removal. She left with one duffel bag and her purse, slamming the front door so hard the front window rattled. By midnight, the house was empty, save for the faint smell of garlic and the deep, profound silence I hadn't heard in months. I changed every lock the next morning, before Lucas came home. The emergency hearing took place in courtroom 3 of the Washington County Juvenile and Family Court building in Hillsborough. I walked in with my attorney, Melissa Hartman, at my side, Lucas holding my hand tight. The room smelled of old wood and lemon polish. Brooke sat at the respondent table, flanked by a public defender who looked barely 30. Mom and Dad sat directly behind her in the gallery, dressed like they were attending a funeral. Judge Elena Morales entered, a woman of sharp intelligence and zero patience. She wasted no time. Melissa stood. Your Honor, we are requesting continuation of the emergency order, conversion to a 5-year restraining order with automatic renewal, and civil damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress and medical endangerment. The big screen lit up with the basement clip. Brooke's voice was clear as glass. Once they're appointed conservators, the house is the biggest asset. We liquidate. The public defender objected weakly. Judge Morales overruled, stating the forensic report confirmed the chain of custody was intact. Next came the kitchen midnight clip, Dad's bourbon toast, and Mom's quiet agreement. Melissa called Dr. Sarah McGuigan to the stand. Sarah laid out the toxicology reports, the projected permanent cognitive risk, and stated flatly that this was deliberate. Repeated administration of a controlled substance to a minor without medical justification. It meets the definition of child abuse under Oregon law, she concluded. Brooke took the stand last, crying, claiming the pills were herbal sleep aids, insisting she only wanted to help. The judge asked one question. Why is there no label, no dosage instruction, and no prescription record? Brooke had no answer. Mom and Dad refused to testify, after the judge warned them about perjury. Their silence spoke louder than words. Judge Morales returned after 20 minutes. The court finds clear and convincing evidence of immediate danger to the child's physical and emotional welfare. The emergency order is converted to a permanent protective order. Brooke Wade, Marilyn Wade, and Edward Wade are prohibited from any contact with Lucas Wade for 5 years, renewable automatically upon showing of continued risk. Civil judgment is entered against Brooke Wade in the amount of $48,000 for medical costs, therapy, and pain and suffering. She banged the gavel. We walked out into the hallway. Lucas hugged my leg. Are we safe now, Mom? I knelt, looked him in the eye, and promised him completely, we are safe now. 1 week later, the press school where Brooke had worked for 6 years received the official Child Protective Services substantiation letter. Oregon state law required immediate termination for any founded child abuse finding against an employee. Her personnel file was flagged permanently. I filed the civil judgment the same day. October sunlight poured through the new skylight I had installed in the upstairs hallway, the one Lucas picked out himself from the catalog. He turned 10 last month, 10 candles on a chocolate cake, shaped like the Portland Timbers logo. He blew them all out in one breath. His cheeks were pink, his eyes bright, no trace of the chemical fog that used to cloud them. The house looks exactly the same from the street, but inside, everything is different. New locks, new alarm code, new doorbell camera. The trust I set up for Lucas is now irrevocable until he turns 18, managed by a bonded fiduciary I chose myself. No relative, no court. No one can touch a penny without my signature and a judge's order. Brooke lives in a 400-square-foot studio off 82nd Avenue, the kind of place where the walls are thin and the parking lot smells like fryer grease. The civil judgment hangs over her like a storm cloud. Wage garnishment started 3 months ago. 15% of every paycheck disappears before she even sees it. She works nights stocking shelves at a 24-hour grocery now. Mom and Dad rent a 1-bedroom unit in the Rockwood neighborhood, the cheapest senior complex that still takes Section 8 vouchers. I heard from a mutual acquaintance they keep the thermostat at 62 to save on the electric bill. They never ask about Lucas. I never offer. Some Sundays, I drive Lucas to the coast. We walk Cannon Beach barefoot, hunt for agates, and eat clam chowder out of bread bowls. He talks nonstop now about school, about soccer tryouts, about the Lego spaceship he's designing. His 4th-grade teacher sent home a note last week. Lucas has shown remarkable improvement in focus and confidence. I keep that note on the fridge next to his latest A+ spelling test. People ask if I miss them. My own parents, my only sister. The answer is simple. I miss the idea of them. I miss the version that existed before greed turned them into strangers. But the people who sat in my kitchen plotting to drug my child for profit, those people were never family. Blood doesn't buy loyalty, and it sure doesn't excuse betrayal. Lucas and I are building a new normal, just the two of us. Our rules, our laughter, our home. Some nights he still crawls into my bed, after a bad dream. I hold him until his breathing evens out. Then I stare at the ceiling and remind myself we made it through the worst. The rest is just living.